Good afternoon. Welcome to St. Joseph's Care Residence. We're a residence for our senior brothers and people who are here after an operation or just for convalescence in general. And this afternoon we're going to be conversing a little bit with Michael Delaney, who is one of our staff members here at St. Joseph's. And Michael is sitting to my left.
I was born in Queens, New York, actually in Jamaica. Stayed there, I think, for just a few years, and then the family moved to Forest Hills. And that's where I started. Well, I didn't really start school in Forest Hills. I got to go back a little bit. I started school in Jamaica. Went there to presentation grammar school for 5 years, and after the 5 years the family moved to Forest Hills, Long Island, and I completed grammar school at Our Lady Queen of Martyrs. And when I graduated from grammar school, I went to Regis High School.
The famous Regis.
The famous Regis High School, yes.
For all those very intelligent people.
Yes,
Well, I don't know about intelligent. I think there must have been a mix-up in names or something. But at any rate, I got in. And I don't know whether you want me to tell all of this.
How many? We come from a big family?
Kind of detail. No, about it. I have a brother and I have a sister. Sister is 5 years younger than I am, and my brother is 13 years younger than I am. So there's a big gap there. But it's a relatively small family, I suppose you would call it.
Are they here on the East Coast?
Yes. My sister is on Long Island. She lives in Copiague. And my brother is a wanderer. He's lived in, I suppose, about 13 different locations. Some of them even as far away as Australia. Wow. But his business took him around, and right now at the present time he's semi-retired, and he lives in North Carolina, a small town called Apex, North Carolina. Strangely, you know, as usually you would think brothers would be very close. We are close in a way, but we didn't grow up closely because of the difference in age. And in the younger years, when age meant something, he'd be so much younger than I was that I didn't hang around with him very much.
Even 1 year, and when you're a kid, makes a big difference.
It sure does. Yeah, there's a kind of an interesting story we tell occasionally in the family about myself and my brother in the younger years. I used to have to take him out when I'd come home from school. You know, my mother had jobs to do and so forth and wanted a bit of break, so she'd tell me to take him out, and I would take him out and so forth, and I'd bring him around to the guys that I was hanging out with, and we'd go over, and there's a lot around the place, and we'd play ball over there, or these kid games, whatever it might be, and I'd have him and put him off to the side, you know. So
How old was he?
He was well, at this time now, he would have been, let's say, maybe 2 years old, and I would have been about 15, okay? Wow. So we'd be playing the ball. So one night, my mother had him, had wanted to give him a bath. So she put him in the tub and was washing him, and in the process must have gotten soap in his eyes, you know, and boy, he screamed out, and he called her an SOB. Whang! Because he's very vulnerable in the bathtub, and did he get a whang on the rear end, you know. He started to cry, and he said, what happened? She said, don't you use that dirty language around me or around anybody else. Well, Harold does, you know.
From the baseball game?
When they play ball, all the kids say that. Why can't I say it? So,
how old was he?
He was about 2.5, maybe 3 years, something like that, you know. So I had to be careful from that time on, you know. But that's just a little illustration of the there was a real big gap in our ages. And then when I went into high school, well, he was only going into grammar school, and then after high school, I went to college, and then the war came, and I was in the service, and then I went into the brothers. So we really didn't spend much time together. But as the time went by, we became very good friends, even though it was at kind of a distance, because he got married and had his own family, 4 kids, and is now kind of semi-retired.
Nice.
Yeah.
What did your parents do for a living back then when you were a kid?
Well, my father was in, I suppose you would call it business finance. He worked in New York, and it was in what they called a credit finance, but it was with industry. It wasn't with people who wanted loans, and this was working with banks and a business, and he would be like a go-between to finance a business project between the businessman and the banker. So he had a nice job, and we were comfortable. We didn't feel the depression as many people did. We were very aware of it, but we didn't personally feel it in the tough ways that many people encountered it. So we had a good.
And your dad traveled a lot, right? Because I remember you telling me a story about going with him.
Right. Most of this was with regard to business, and maybe the story I told you was with going
Cuba.
to Cuba. It was Cuba, yeah. And that was in a very, very early day. It was 1936, I believe. And we planed out of Miami over to Havana. And it was in the early days of air passenger transportation. And I remember the plane, it was what would you call it? I suppose a seaplane. We went down to the dock to get on the plane.
You went too?
I went with him, yeah, right. And well, it's I suppose I must have been maybe about 14 at the time, and we took the plane. It was 90 mile trip, just across, and landed in the Havana Harbor. So it was my first time on a plane, and it was on the sea at the same time.
Wow.
So it was an interesting thing, yeah.
It's funny that you grew up during the Depression. Or my uncle tells such an opposite story about poverty, although they were so poor that everybody around them was poor that they didn't really know they were poor, because they didn't know anybody that wasn't poor.
Right.
And it sort of lend itself more for going into a life of service. Here you came from a world that didn't have that kind of struggle, and yet you went into the field of service. Anyway, you had a religious calling as a young guy?
No, I don't think so. It's strange that you asked the question, because today is July the 25th, and it happens to be the feast of St. James. I had a teacher, sister, a nun, Sister St. James. So this is her feast day in religion, and I think she must be dead 30 years anyway, But she was very, very instrumental in my life. She was my 5th grade teacher. And she frequently asked me about having a religious vocation. I was only in grammar school at the time. And I kind of, just poo-pooed her. Really. I said, you could ask almost any one of my friends. Ask my little brother. They know all the warts and so forth. There's no religious vocation here.